Breaking U.S. immigration updates. As executive power pushes the limits of immigration law, federal judges are stepping in to defend due process, protect vulnerable communities, and uphold the Constitution. In a time of rising uncertainty, the courts are proving to be the last line of defense. If you are interested in this, please pay attention and watch the video through to the end to get all the information. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell on upcoming video. In recent months, the executive branch has pushed the limits of its authority when it comes to immigration enforcement. From issuing questionable executive orders involving ICE to removing individuals from the U.S. without due process, the administration's actions have raised serious constitutional concerns. But amid the chaos, there's a silver lining. Federal judges across the country are stepping in to block these abuses, reaffirming that the rule of law still matters and that our democracy isn't dead yet. Judges step in to protect TPS for Ukrainians and Venezuelans. Another battlefront is temporary protected status, a program that shields individuals from deportation if their home countries are facing war, natural disasters, or other humanitarian crises. The administration has tried to cancel TPS for several groups, including Ukrainians and Venezuelans, despite ongoing instability in both nations. Thankfully, federal judges blocked these cancellations. In the Ukrainian case, a judge halted the termination of TPS, while Senator Dick Durbin introduced legislation to offer further protection in case TPS is eventually rescinded. Likewise, a judge in another district issued an injunction against ending TPS for Venezuelans. Once again, judges have acted as a critical check on executive power, protecting vulnerable communities from sudden and unjust deportation. ICE disrupts a trial in Boston. Judicial integrity under threat. Perhaps the most dramatic example of executive overreach occurred in a Boston courtroom. A Dominican national was on trial for vehicle-related offenses. While the trial was still underway, ICE agents stormed the courtroom and detained the defendant before the legal proceedings had concluded. This unprecedented act shocked the presiding judge so deeply that he dismissed the charges outright, condemning ICE's actions as a threat to judicial independence. The message was clear. If law enforcement agencies bypass the courts, democracy itself is at risk. U.S. judge allows White House to require non-citizens to register with government. A federal judge is allowing the Trump administration to move forward with a requirement that non-citizens in the U.S. must register with the federal government, in a move that could have far-reaching repercussions for immigrants across the country. In a ruling on Thursday, Judge Trevor Neal McFadden sided with the administration, which had argued that they were simply enforcing an already existing requirement for everyone in the country who wasn't a U.S. citizen to register with the government. The requirement goes into effect on Friday. The Department of Homeland Security announced on February 25th that it was mandating that non-citizens register with the federal government, and said those who didn't self-report could face fines or prosecution. Failure to register is considered a crime, and people will be required to carry registration documents with them or risk prison time and fines. Registration will be mandatory for everyone 14 and older without legal status. People registering have to provide their fingerprints and address, and parents and guardians of anyone under age 14 must ensure they registered. The registration process also applies to Canadians who are in the U.S. for more than 30 days, such as so-called snowbirds who spend winter months in places like Florida. Federal immigration law has long required that people who aren't U.S. citizens and live in the U.S., including those here illegally, register with the government. Those laws can be traced back to the Alien Registration Act of 1940, which came amid growing fears of immigrants and political subversives in the early days of the Second World War. The current requirements stem from the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, but the requirement that non-citizens register has been enforced only in rare circumstances. In fact, advocates opposing the government say it hasn't been universally used since it was first introduced in the mid-1940s. It was used in a limited way after September 11th, when the National Security Entry-Exit Registration System required that all non-citizen males age 16 and older from 25 countries, all but one of the majority Arab or Muslim, register with the U.S. government. The program led to no terrorism convictions, but pulled more than 13,000 people into deportation proceedings. It was suspended in 2011 and dissolved in 2016. The Trump administration has argued that the registration requirement has always existed and that officials are simply enforcing it for everyone. The groups that sued say this registration process is expressly to facilitate Donald Trump's aim of carrying out mass deportations of people in the country illegally. The plaintiffs also say the government should have gone through the more lengthy public notification process before bringing about the change. They argue that the registry puts people who work, contribute to the economy, and have deep family ties in the U.S. into a deep bind. Do they come forward, register, and essentially give up their location to a government intent on carrying out mass deportations? Or do they stay in the shadows and risk being charged with the crime of not registering? The government has already asked people subject to the registration requirement to create an account on the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services website. That is all today in this video. What are your thoughts on this? Please let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the entire video. Hopefully, the information is useful to you. See you later in the next video. Till then, take care.
Breaking U.S. immigration updates as the U.S. executive branch continues to push the boundaries of immigration enforcement. Federal judges have increasingly stepped into safeguard constitutional protection and due process. Recent actions by the administration, such as detaining individuals without a court processing and attempting to cancel temporary protected status for vulnerable populations, have sparked serious legal challenges. Fortunately, the judiciary has acted as a critical check on executive overreach. Federal judges have blocked effort to end TPS for both Ukrainian and Venezuelan sitting ongoing humanitarian crisis in those countries. This ruling underscored the court's role in preventing sudden depression that could end ago. Least in the case of Ukrainians, a judge halted the termination of TPS while Congress worked on a potential legislative protection. Similarly, a separate court issued an injunction to preserve TPS for Venezuelans. Another troubling incident occurred in a Boston courtroom where ICE agents detained a Dominican national mid-trial. Bypassing the judicial process, the presiding judge dismissed the case and criticized ICE interference as a direct threat to judicial independence, reinforcing the importance of a separation of powers aimed at rule of law. Meanwhile, in a separate ruling, a federal judge allowed the Trump administration to enforce a long dormant requirement for all non-citizens, including undocumented individuals and some candidate visitors, to register with the federal government. This includes providing fingerprints and addresses. The penalties for non-compliance, critics argue this move revises outdated war-era laws and is facilitating vast repression, especially without following proper public notification procedures. Although the executive branch claims these actions are legally grounded, civil rights advocates warn that they could lead to discrimination, fear, and erosion of trust in a public institution. The judiciary involvement has proven crucial in maintaining democratic checks and balances and the growing immigration tensions and administrative overreach.